Hey guys, hey brothers and sisters, welcome back to my channel. So I've been a little MIA from YouTube, and if you don't know, well, it's because I had a baby. He is now currently 1 month old, and I have him sitting right here in front of me in his baby swing. If you do hear some baby noises in the back, that's my son Jeremiah. So I definitely been wanting to make this video for quite some time, simply because it's long overdue. It's basically the process of my labor and delivery. I want to talk about everything from what I prayed for my birth and what actually happened, what I got. So I'll definitely put on the screen what my prayer list was, and then you'll see based on my story on how my labor and delivery actually went, and if God actually answered my prayer. So I did make a little list just because I didn't want to forget anything. So I'll go ahead and I'll just basically read them down, and then I'll start with my labor and delivery story. So the first thing that I prayed for when I was pregnant, this is basically my prayer throughout the entire pregnancy, right? For 9 months, I would pray and I would be on my knees praying to God. These were the things that I prayed. So the first thing was for labor to last under 6 hours. Now, my first labor in 2005, right? Because I have a son who's now 17 years old. So I had him in 2005. That labor lasted 6 hours and some change. So because that labor was 6 hours and some change, I prayed for a labor that would be close to it or less. I did not want a labor to last long, especially when I hear stories of women who have been in labor for 72 hours. You hear crazy stories of women being in labor for 5 days. And I can't imagine being in pain for just days straight or hours straight. So I prayed for the Lord to have mercy on me. And so I asked for labor and delivery from beginning to the birth of our baby to be under 6 hours. The second thing that I prayed for was no tearing. In 2005, now you will see that I will reference 2005 a lot because that is my only point of reference, right? That's the only time I gave birth besides this time. So I would just reference to that time frame and just kind of basically ask God, hey, look, this is what happened then. This is what I'm praying for now. So in 2005, I had what is called an episiotomy, and that's basically when you are pushing, the doctor cuts you. He literally cuts you down there to make more room and more space for the baby to come out. Now, I was young. I didn't know any better. So I kind of just was at their mercy. Whatever the doctors, whatever the nurses or midwife would say, I just kind of went along with it. But this time it was very different. I prayed for the Lord that I would not tear, and I prayed that they would not do an episiotomy. And so the third thing that I prayed for was, it's called the fetal ejection reflex. I prayed to feel the urge to push my baby out. Now, it might sound, if you're watching this and you're probably thinking, the urge to push, well, duh, you're having, a baby. Of course you're going to feel the urge to push. Not necessarily. There's some people who don't feel the urge to push. As a matter of fact, back in 2005, when I had my son, I didn't feel the urge to push. And one of the reasons being was because I had epidural. Basically, epidural is just a medication that numbs you from the waist down, so you don't feel the urge to push. You don't feel anything, to be honest. The contractions, they minimize the pain of the contractions, so you're not in unbearable pain. But the downside of the epidural is that when it comes time to push, you don't know if you need to push or not. So what I remember was that in 2005, I was being coached on when to push. Like my nurses and the OBGYNs, like they would tell me when to push. And unfortunately, that caused me to push for hours. That possibly caused me to have an episiotomy, right? Which is when they cut me. Like it was just, there was so much unnecessary pushing that I believe could have been prevented if I just felt the urge to push and did it when my body told me to do it. So I prayed for this time around to feel the urge to push. I prayed, and it's specifically called fetal ejection reflex. So when you think of like throwing up, it's the same thing. It's like you feel the urge to push down, and it's just so natural. You just feel like you need to push, and that's something I was praying for. The fourth thing that I prayed for was for this to be a completely medication free birth. I didn't want no medication. And by no medication, I am talking not even the IVs. I wanted everything to be natural. So one of the things that they do with birth is, if a woman is not going into labor naturally, they induce it by giving her Pitocin. I did my research, and let me tell you, every single medication that you can think of always comes with a risk. And just knowing the risks of Pitocin, which I'm not even gonna, I'm not even gonna go into the details, because I know if some of you may end up having to get Pitocin, I don't want to scare you. So you'll just have to do the research on your own. But when I did my research and I saw what the risks were, I knew instantly that this is not something I want. When I tell you, I even have videos on my Instagram page of me dancing. This is on my personal page, of me dancing when I was 38 weeks pregnant, because I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna make sure we get this baby out naturally. Like, I'm gonna induce my own labor by dancing and doing squats. But that's besides the point. I didn't want no medication, and I didn't want nothing to start labor, and I didn't want medication during labor. And which is the epidural, which is to numb, the pain and numb the contractions. And then the third thing is after birth. So once you have the baby, they offer you Pitocin to contract the uterus and help it stop bleeding. So I also did not want the medication post birth. I wanted none. This is pre, during, and after. I wanted no medication, period. So that was my fourth prayer. The fifth thing that I prayed for was the position that I would be in to push my baby out. So 2005, I had to push my baby on my back. Now, I'm going to be a little bit, blunt here, but let's be honest. When you are taking a poop, are you laying down or are you sitting upright? Okay? Your body is designed in this position, right? So when you want to push something out, you got to sit upright, or you got to use gravity with this process. You don't want to have gravity against you. So when I pushed my son out in 2005, I was laying on my back, and it was very uncomfortable. So when you're in the laying on your back position, your pelvic is just closing. So it doesn't have enough room for the baby to come out easier. So I don't understand why do they enforce women to push on their back so much? It just doesn't make sense. I mean, you're going against gravity. You're laying down. Like, I just don't get it. But I pray that I can push in whatever position I felt comfortable in. And some of the positions I would say would be like squatting. Being in a squatting position is a good position to push your baby out. Being on all fours, being on your side. I mean, there's so many ways that you can push your baby out. Being on your back is like, it's just like the least beneficial. Pushing on your back is the one that makes the least sense. This doesn't, compute to my mind. Like, why is that the most common way when that makes like the least sense? But anyways, that was something that I prayed for, was the position that I would push my baby in. I prayed that I can push in whatever position, that no doctor would stop me, that I wouldn't be refrained from, sitting, squatting, or being on all fours, or whatever, standing even. Some women push while standing. I just pray that, I would have good doctors and good nurses and midwives that would allow me whatever position that I felt the most comfortable in. The sixth thing that I prayed for was, of course, a healthy baby. That's a given. I prayed for a healthy baby from the moment of conception, and, that everything would be great, that the moment that he was born, we would hear his cry, that he would be alert, that he would, eyes open, and just, overall well-being, that all his levels would be great. And so that is something that I prayed for. The seventh thing that I prayed for was an intact placenta. Now, I don't know, definitely the enemy was trying to attack me during my pregnancy, because I noticed that on social media, because I was looking at a lot of baby things and pregnancy, postpartum, just I was looking at everything pregnancy related. My algorithm started to pretty much understand, okay, this person is probably pregnant. So they started giving me a whole bunch of videos on birth. And there was some videos that were just downright scary. I mean, videos of things, of births that went wrong. And one of them had to do with the placenta. And I'm not going to go into detail about the birth and what happened, because I am a firm believer that when a woman is pregnant, the last thing she needs to hear is any birth stories that are traumatizing, that are negative, that are bad. I rebuke those. So I'm not going to get into detail about the story that I saw on Instagram, but I will say it definitely put in my mind, oh, I need to write this down. I need to pray that when I deliver the placenta, that the placenta needs to be fully intact. There cannot be no residue and nothing left remaining inside my uterus. Like, it needs to be fully gone, fully out. It is absolutely crucial. I mean, life or death, like, that is important, that the placenta is fully intact. So I prayed for that. Said, Lord, may my placenta be fully intact when I deliver it, and that nothing is left behind. Then the 8th thing that I prayed for was to give birth within the hour of me getting to the hospital. Now I'm going to go into a little detail about why I wrote that I want to give birth within the hour of getting to the hospital. So one of the things about laboring at the hospital is that they will start pushing interventions, right? Because their goal is to get you in and out as quick as possible. So if you get to the hospital and let's just say you're 5 centimeters dilated, and 4 or 5 hours go by and you're now 6 centimeters dilated, they're going to start offering, interventions such as, would you like for us to break your water? And that's if your water hasn't broken yet. They'll start offering, Pitocin to get things going. They'll offer you the epidural. They, and all these things end up accumulating. And then before you know it, that can end up ultimately into a C-section. So I wanted to avoid going to the hospital at all costs. Like, I wanted to get to the hospital. 1 second. I'm back. This time I have my little baby with me. But I'll be feeding him while I tell the story. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to do was to get to the hospital and labor at the hospital, right? I wanted to labor at home. That was one thing I prayed for. I said, God, I want to labor as much as I can and basically get to the hospital when it is the hour to give birth. Basically, I wanted to get to the hospital to push my baby out. So I did pray to give birth within the hour of me getting to the hospital. Now it's time to tell you the story of my labor and how it actually went. So it was 5:30 in the morning and I feel my first contraction. And I'm thinking, okay, is this Braxton Hicks? Like, is this the real thing? Because my job was only 38 weeks. My baby. The doctors say that once you are 37 weeks pregnant, you are considered full term. So you can have your baby anytime after that and they will not stop the labor. So around 6 something in the morning, I decided to wake up my husband and let him know, hey, I am having labor pains. And he's like, what do we do? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to go get ready. Because, again, we didn't know, like, going into it, like, how things were going to progress. Was it going to be fast? Was it going to be slow? So I just basically was like, all right, let me just start getting ready. I already had my hospital bag packed. So I basically get in the shower and I start worshiping. So I'm singing What a Beautiful Name It Is, the name of Jesus. And I'm basically worshiping through each contraction. So once the contractions would come, I would stop and I would just kind of like moan and just have to, release that pain through making noise. And once the contraction would leave, I would go back to worshiping and singing and praising God. So once my shower was done, I come out, I call my mom. First things first, I had to call my mom and let her know, hey, it's time. That was one thing that we what's wrong, baby? What's wrong, Cookie? He is just watching me. So that is one thing that my mom and I spoke about, was that the moment I went into labor, she was to be contacted immediately, and that way she can go into prayer mode. I mean, my mom is a praying warrior. And if there's anybody I wanted praying over me while I was in labor, it's my mother. There was really no one else that I wanted praying over my labor except my mom and my grandmother. Labor is a very delicate time, and I just didn't want anybody, praying over it. I just wanted my mother. And so basically, my mom, I call her, let her know. I said, I'm in labor. This is it. This is the time. And she's like, okay. The fact that my contractions were 10 minutes apart, I thought was a good sign. I was like, okay, we're close, but not that close. So let's just, labor this. Let's do this thing. Let's get ready. Well, let me tell you that it was now 7 o'clock, and the contractions were like 5 minutes apart. When they were 10 minutes apart, the contractions were bearable. They were enough to where I could just moan and make noise and then get some type of relief from it. But I would say that when the contractions were 5 minutes apart, yeah, I couldn't even moan through it anymore. It got so bad, right? When they were 5 minutes apart, the pain was so bad. I just remember clenching my teeth, and then I also remember going like this, like it was hard. And I remember also thinking about Jesus, right? So when a woman is in labor and she is going through what is the worst natural physical pain, I feel like in that moment you meet God. When you are in so much pain and you can't understand the pain, you can't even comprehend it, you have to almost get to that point where now you have to give it to God, right? It surpasses your understanding. So now you are one-on-one with God and asking him for his strength, because it is so unbearable. The contractions were 5 minutes apart and I couldn't bear it anymore. And yet we still had I mean, the fact that the contractions were 5 minutes apart and I couldn't bear them anymore, it's crazy to think that we still had ways to go. Now I remember my husband, and he was just so, worried and concerned because he sees me in so much pain, but there's not much he can do. So he was just kind of like, hey, do you want to maybe try sitting down? Do you want to maybe try this? And I was just like, leave me alone. Don't tell me what to do. And I was giving him such an attitude. And I remember telling him, I was like, hey, look, after the contraction was done, I would say, hey, look, I'm so sorry I'm giving you attitude. Please don't take this personal. I am just unable to bear this pain. I don't know how to deal with it. And he's like, no, I understand. He knew that the attitude I had towards him was just out of pain. And so I remember we were ready. My husband was ready. And we decided to, head to the hospital. Because at that point, the contractions were 5 minutes apart for an hour. And they say that when you have contractions, they call it the 5-1-1 rule. So when your contractions are 5 minutes apart, they're lasting 1 minute long, and they are like this consistently for a whole hour, they say it's time to go to the hospital. Now, I was using this app that I was counting my contractions. So that app was awesome because you would just push a button, it would count the contraction, and then once your contraction left, you would just hit the button again and it would stop. So it timed the contractions, and very quickly it said, go to the hospital. And I'm like, no, because I don't want to go. I need to labor at home. The last thing I want to do is get to the hospital and have them tell me that I'm only 5 centimeters dilated or something like that. So I'm like, Papito, don't look at the light. Don't look at the light. Look at mommy. Look at mommy. I feel like he's looking at the light right behind the camera. So I just got to push his face so he could look at me instead. So basically we get in the car and we're heading to the hospital, and I start throwing up. That's something that I completely forgot, is that when you are in labor, you can throw up. I don't know, your body just gets rid of anything. I remember I couldn't wear a seatbelt. the hospital was 30 minutes away from our home, and I kid you not, I could not wear a seatbelt. I mean, to sit in this position and wear a seatbelt, I couldn't do it. I mean, those contractions went from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. So now I'm only getting a 3 minute break in between. And mind you, the contractions were already unbearable. At that point, I felt like I met God. So that now they're 3 minutes apart. So that unbearable pain for a whole minute was coming every 3 minutes. And I'm just like, I would get a break, and then as soon as it would come, I would just start twisting like a pretzel. I mean, I remember being in the car and just holding on for dear life. And my husband's just like, "Can you put your seatbelt on?" I'm like, I can't put it on. And it was crazy. We finally get to the hospital, and by the time we get to the hospital, hold on, baby, don't look at the light. I don't want you looking at the light. So by the time we get to the hospital, my contractions are now 2 minutes apart. So I'm basically, I remember when we get out the car and I'm walking and a contraction starts, I get on the floor and I get on all fours. I basically crawled to the hospital. I kid you not, I crawled to the hospital. I couldn't walk. So when I get into the hospital, they immediately saw me. They had to get a wheelchair and wheel me in. My husband's running behind with my backpack for the hospital bag that I had packed. And we're just basically heading straight to the labor and delivery room. When they saw me coming into the hospital, they knew that I was in active labor. I mean, they basically saw me and said, "Yeah, we need to get her in stat." So they get me into the labor and delivery room, and I basically crawl onto the bed, right? I'm on all fours. Now, this is the position that I pushed my son out in. I pushed Jeremiah out in, was on all fours. I get on the bed, and I'm on my hands, and I'm on my knees. I'm on all fours, and you couldn't move me from that position, because that was it. That was the position that my body said, "This is it. This is the position you're going to do this in," because it just felt natural. Now, I was still in unbearable pain. I still couldn't handle it. It was still painful, but it was the position that I felt it was right for my body. So I'm on all fours, and now the contractions are like 1 minute to 2 minutes apart. And the midwife comes to me and she says, we need to check you to see how much you are dilated. So I'm like, okay. They check me, and would you believe that I was 9 centimeters dilated? Like, I get to the hospital and I was already ready to push. So remember, that was one of my prayers. So basically, she goes, you're 9 centimeters dilated. You're ready to have the baby. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. This is the crazy part. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. I can't bear this pain anymore, because I couldn't bear the pain when my contractions were 5 minutes apart. Now that they're 1 minute to 2 minutes apart, it was unbearable times 1,000. So I'm just like, what's wrong, baby? So I'm like, I can't do this. I need epidural. So now, what, baby? So now I start asking for epidural, and my husband's like, "You said you didn't want medication." I'm like, I know, but I can't deal with it. I can't bear this pain. So I asked for the epidural, and basically they said to me, "Would you be able to sit still while we inject you on your back, while we insert the IV for the epidural? Would you be able to sit still for a long period of time?" And I said, "No, I can't. My contractions are too close. They're not that far apart. They're too close, and I can't sit still." I mean, I was on all fours. I just couldn't move. And they were like, "Then you can't get the epidural. It is too late." And I was like, so then, so I literally, like, basically in my mind, I'm like, we're going to have to do this natural. Even though this is what I prayed for. I prayed for a natural birth. But at that moment, I was just like, I just want the drug. Give me the drug. So they said no, they can't give it to me. So now it's time for me to push my baby out. And would you believe that I started to get the fetal ejection reflex. I started to feel the urge to push. And each time that I would get the contraction, I would grab onto my husband and I would push. I will never forget the roaring noises that I was making. I mean, it was very primal. I mean, I just remember being like, ah, like I can't replicate it, but it was just like when you push, you are pushing. I mean, a human being out of you, and like there's just nothing to compare it to. You become a lioness, and so I'm there pushing. But Papi, don't look at the light. So I'm there pushing him, and it's just, man, I tell you, it was intense. I have to give props to the midwife who coached me on pushing, because each time I pushed, it's like I would feel the baby coming out and then I would stop and then he would come right back up, right? And so it would just be like almost there, and then his head would just go back in. So I remember the midwife just kind of saying something to me that just clicked for me. She goes, next time you push, just go through the door. Every time you push, you stop midway. And she said, I need you to just walk through the door. Just keep walking. And I don't know, but that just like clicked for me, because when that next contraction came and I started pushing, I just imagined myself walking through the door. And I said, just keep going. So I just pushed. Even though I was exhausted, I just kept pushing because I said, keep going. And then boom, that is when I felt the ring of fire. Oh my gosh, the ring of fire. That, let me tell you, that name fits because it really does feel like there's like a burning sensation. I just remember like feeling like, whoo, like you make all the craziest noises when you're giving birth, but I was like, whoo. And then the next contraction, my baby just came out. I heard his cry. Immediately I heard his cry. Immediately they placed him on me, and he was just wide-eyed and alert, and we were just in complete awe, just watching and looking at our baby. And then when I delivered the placenta, the first thing I asked was, is it intact? And she examined it, and she said, yes, it is intact. Everything is out. And then the next thing I asked was, did I tear? And she said, no tearing. She looked at me, she checked me down there. She said, no tearing. There is no stitches that will be needed. And then finally, the last thing I asked was, so what time was my son born? And she said at 9:11 a.m. So my contraction started at 5:30 and he was born at 9:11. So literally just about under 4 hours, right? Not even 4 hours, like 3 hours and some change. So I'm looking at my list, so that's just why I'm looking that way. So my labor and delivery was less than 6 hours. No tear. I felt the fetal ejection reflex. I did it with no medication, even though I asked for it. I begged for it. They forced me to do it naturally, which I'm grateful for. I have no regrets. I absolutely, am very glad that it worked out that way, because that is truly what I wanted. I know that epidural does have its side effects. It does have its risks, just like any medication. So I'm very glad that I did it naturally. And then the position that I pushed in was on all fours. So that was another answered prayer. My baby was born healthy. Thank you, Jesus. Levels and everything checked out wonderfully. My placenta was intact, and I gave birth basically within the hour of getting into the hospital. Everything that I prayed over my labor and delivery, the Lord answered. I can't thank God enough for blessing my birth, for allowing my labor and delivery to go as I prayed for. I mean, truly, He answers your prayers. If you give it onto Him and you release your fears about birth. Okay, I think someone's hungry. Let's give you some more milkies. Let's give you some more milkies, baby. Everything that I prayed for, the Lord answered, and I can't thank God enough. I mean, I still thank Him till this day for my labor and delivery. I definitely want to say, for any woman out there who's watching who is pregnant and is about to give birth, I just want to say you have to put it into the Lord's hands and everything will be okay. God made you for this. You were born for this, right? We were created in such a way that we can bring life into this world. And so do not have any fear. The Bible says do not fear 365 times, one for each day. So remember that, do not fear going into this when you go into labor and you go into to have your baby. Know that the Lord is watching over you. Jesus will be present in your room with you. He will make sure that the angels will guide your baby and protect your baby and will guide him as he or she is making their way into this world. I just really hope that, this video blessed you if you are, expecting, or even if you're not and you just, would like to know what labor and delivery is like. I feel free to comment and let me know what you thought about my labor and delivery video. But I definitely appreciate you guys watching. I know I have my baby boy with me, but I am a mom now, so of course he's priority and I have to make sure that he gets taken care of. And truthfully, this was the time I set aside to make this video. So if I didn't do it now, I probably would not have done it. So I'm just like, the heck with it. Let's just get this done, baby and everything. So I pray that you guys were blessed, and let me know what you guys think below in the comments. And until next time, God bless you.